In this third and final lecture on Italian unification, and I know that excites you, we're going to take a look at the southern question of the Italian question. We know already from the previous two lectures that the northern half of the Italian peninsula was unified under the Kingdom of Piedmont, Sardinia, in the efforts of Camillo Cavour. And now we're going to look at this question that emerged: what to do with the South? And when we talk about the South, we're really referring to the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, all the way down at the toe and the heel of the boot, and the island of Sicily. We've also got the Papal States in the middle. So despite the emergence of a new Italian kingdom in 1859 and 1860, and 1861, the abrupt end of the war against Austria, the Treaty of Villafranca, and the fact that the terms of the treaty gave cause to some Italian nationalists to want to continue the struggle to add even more territory to the new Italian state, we're going to see the question, again, as I said, of the South. The cession of Nice and Savoy to France stirred Garibaldi in particular, because he was from Nice. And so Cavour decided that he would launch Garibaldi, who had been an adventurer, who had fought in South American revolutions. He would launch Garibaldi and an army of volunteers wearing red shirts that you can sort of see. It got kind of covered up there. If I can move this over just a little bit. There you go. So you see Garibaldi in his red shirts down to the south of the Italian peninsula to attack the Bourbon kingdom, and that is the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies. And this was Cavour's thought, was that Garibaldi would take this ragtag force down to Sicily, and he would be easily defeated by the Neapolitan army that was vastly superior in numbers, in weapons, and of course in training as well. And yet this didn't happen. So again, unintended consequences. What we see is that Garibaldi leaves from Quarto up in the area of Liguria, the Ligurian Sea, and he sails down to Marsala on the western coast of Sicily, landing there, and he immediately met a force from the Bourbon army at Calatafimi, and he defeats that force. He then marches on to Palermo, which is, again, you can see on the northern coast of Sicily, and from Palermo he marches to Milazzo, where there's one last great stand that the Bourbon put up, and again, Garibaldi is able to defeat the superior forces of the Bourbon army. The Bourbon then flee back across the Straits of Messina that separates Italy, mainland Italy, from Sicily, and they are going to regroup to try to defend their kingdom. Now, one might ask the question, why was Garibaldi so successful, this ragtag band of 1,000 red-shirted volunteers? And I think the answer is this: the support of the local populations in Sicily, in particular the peasant class, who rise up in rebellion and launch guerrilla warfare against the Bourbon army and really open the way, or clear the path, for Garibaldi and his band of volunteers. And by the way, Garibaldi's band of volunteers grows as they move from Marsala to Palermo to Milazzo, and then they're going to move, as you see, the red arrows indicate, into the toe of the boot and begin to move towards Naples, which is, again, the capital of the Kingdom of Two Sicilies. So I think that's really the idea, and that's something that Victor Emmanuel and Cavour did not anticipate, this widespread support amongst the peasants. So here, unlike in the Paris, the French revolutions, where we see the people of Paris, here we see the people of Sicily, and the peasant class in particular, supporting and helping Garibaldi to victory. So the question then becomes, well, what to do next? Garibaldi has now gone on to the mainland, and here you can see this wonderful statue of Garibaldi. Garibaldi, by the way, was also named the dictator of Sicily on behalf of King Victor Emmanuel of Piedmont, Sardinia, and the question was, what do we do? And there were several courses of action open and discussed and debated. One was the organization of popular assemblies across Sicily, and the toe of the Italian boot, with the idea of letting the people decide, let the people vote for their future. Do they want to be annexed to the Kingdom of Piedmont, Sardinia? Do they want to set up their own government of some sort? And so that was one of the options that was open. The other option, however, was the top-down and speedy annexation to the Kingdom of Italy. That would be done by decree and by force. And this was the solution favored by the landed aristocracy. And the landed aristocracy, who owned most of the land, kind of like in Russia, if you will, really took a dim view of peasants becoming so actively involved in this fight against the Bourbon monarchy. So the landed aristocracy of Sicily, and the kingdom of the two Sicilies, that is, was very happy to see the Bourbon monarchy defeated. But the landed aristocracy had its own ideas and its own vision for the post-Bourbon world, and that did not include sort of peasant assemblies, councils, and or any kind of government that would include peasants and allow them to participate. So the speedy annexation to the Kingdom of Italy was seen by the landed elite as the easiest and quickest solution to the problem of what to do. So what then did happen with Garibaldi? You can see him there, and I'm sorry, I should have gone onto this map, not wanting to put people to sleep, right? So Cavour, so what happened? Cavour himself sends an army from the Kingdom of Piedmont. Cavour sends an envoy to Palermo to demand the immediate annexation of Sicily and southern Italy to Turin. Garibaldi was really repulsed by this. He was upset by this, and he expels the envoy sent by Cavour, and he expels them. The Sicilian elites were fearful, again, as I said, of peasant uprisings and ambitions of land redistribution. So think about this. Peasants typically and always want land. The landed elites never want to give that to them. So they're the landed elites in Sicily and southern Italy are on edge. And it seems as though Garibaldi had sort of promised the peasants land in return for their service and help in defeating the Bourbon army. Yet the Sicilian aristocrats demand the restoration of law and order. And this is what's going to happen. One of Garibaldi's lieutenants, one of his 1,000 red-shirted men by the name of Nino Bixio, ordered his men to fire on peasants who were demonstrating in the small village of Bronte on August 4th, 1860. And similar such peasant demonstrations broke out across Sicily, and the response of Garibaldi, who was the dictator of Sicily, is similar. He's going to use his forces to suppress these peasant demonstrations and rebellions, oftentimes firing on them and oftentimes massacring peasants. And this is going to really leave a deep wound in Sicily and in southern Italy. And what Garibaldi decides to do is he's going to really side with the landowning aristocracy that brought and restore law and order. And this really kind of snuffs out any attempt of forming a republic along radical ideas that would involve peasant participation and redistribution of land. And again, this leaves a lasting impact, an imprint on Italian society that lasts down to this very, very day. That is, the hopes and aspirations of southern peasants never took flight, were never recognized by the aristocracy and the elites, and the aristocracy and the elites in Sicily and southern Italy simply replaced the repressive Bourbon regime. So, that being said, what is the last straw? So, Cavour, at this point, doesn't trust Garibaldi, though Garibaldi is actively suppressing these rebellions that are occurring in Sicily and southern Italy. Cavour is still kind of wary of Garibaldi and what his ultimate plans and ambitions might be. Cavour organizes a Piedmontese army. You can see in the blue arrows that he sends down to the southern part of the peninsula with the idea of heading off Garibaldi, who seemed to be marching up the peninsula from south to north towards the Papal States and really towards the eternal city of Rome. And so Cavour is going to desperately try to prevent that, and in fact, he does. The Piedmont troops march all the way from the kingdom of Piedmont, Sardinia, down through the Papal States. They skirt Rome, which is still under the control of the Pope and French troops that had been protecting the Pope, and there's a meeting at this little tiny place called Teano, which you can barely see on the screen, but the blue arrow, the red arrows meet, and there's a fateful meeting on October 26, 1860, at which Garibaldi formally surrenders his command to Victor Emmanuel II, the King of Italy, the Italian kingdom, and he does so in person, and it's a rather formal affair, and we see that Garibaldi puts aside any ambitions of a republic in Italy, land redistribution, working with peasants. He puts those aside, and he submits to the authority of the King, Victor Emmanuel II. And that really then cements the unification process of southern Italy to the kingdom of Piedmont, Savoy. And that's going to happen again October 26 of 1860. And so this really ends the first phase of the Risorgimento, and that is the revitalization or rising again of the Italian state. which hadn't been in existence since ancient times. Now, there are only two areas that still lay outside the Italian kingdom. One is in the northeast part on the right-hand side, Austrian Veneto, still controlled by the Austrians. That's going to change as Austria and Prussia go to war over the German states. And as Germans unifying, Austria is going to lose a war to Prussia. By the way, the Italian kingdom conveniently supported Prussia in that war and received the Austrian Veneto in recompense for that. The other area are the Papal States. And again, we see that the Papal States and really Rome, the city of Rome, defended by 10,000 French troops. Now, you might remember from class that France and Prussia are going to go to war, which led to the defeat and the capture of Louis Napoleon III. And at that point in 1870, with the defeat of the French troops are no longer able to stay in Rome, and they're withdrawn back to France. And at that point, the Italian kingdom is able to forcibly take over the city of Rome, though the Italian kingdom does not take over, does not invade the Vatican, which is the Pope's enclave, if you will, and today an independent state itself. So that is going to be the case. That by 1870 we see the entire Italian peninsula unified. So in the final analysis, the more conservative liberal faction led by Cavour, this wily, dedicated statesman, won out in the struggle for unification. We do not see a radical or Republican ideas putting Italy together. It's done from the north of Italy. It's done from the top down. Italy is going to have a constitution that was granted in 1848 by King Charles Albert, which has calls for a two-chamber legislature, a constitution that is somewhat liberal in that it looks to promote the idea of industrialization, of commerce, of free trade, and those types of things. Yet the king is still going to have a lot of power and control, along with the prime minister, who responds directly to the king, not to the parliament. So that's going to end the idea of Italian unification. And it's often said that Italy was unified by 1870, but that there wasn't really a sense of Italian-ness. So the saying goes something like this: Italy is made as a nation geographically, now we need to make the Italians. And I think you can see just the map is so divided. There's so many different regions from north to central to south. The language itself is not standard and uniform. The language that would become Italian comes from the area of Tuscany, and it's really thanks to writers, that is novelists and intellectuals, that the Tuscan dialect of Italian spread to other areas and became the official language over time. So there's a great deal of division within the Italian peninsula. It's a unified state now. It's no longer just a geographical expression. However, some of the wounds from how the unification was actually achieved and put together, again, top down from the north, again, the landed elites in the south siding with the kingdom of Piedmont Savoy and not taking into consideration the needs and the desires of the peasants of the South, really to this day it is quite visible in Italian society, in the Italian economy, and in Italian politics in a way that's sort of surprising, if you will. Can you imagine, traces of 1860 United States America still visible today in our society? One might argue that you could find some references and some echoes if we listen closely enough. So with that being said, Italy, though unified, is not really going to disturb or upset the balance of power in Europe. So Italy is going to be unified, but it's going to be a secondary power. When we turn our attention next to Germany, however, when Germany is once Germany's unified, that is, Germany as a new state in the center of Europe is very much going to reshape the balance of power and drive the history of Europe from its unification in 1870 all the way down to World War I, and in between the wars, World War II, and even the post-war settlements that we see after World War II. So with that, I'll end this lecture. If you have any questions, again, please bring them to class. I love to hear from you. Your questions matter to me. So that's that. Thanks.